The crystal chandeliers of the governor's mansion cast golden light across the polished ballroom floor, but Catherine Hartwell felt like she was drowning. Her corset was too tight, her smile too false, and the diamond engagement ring on her finger too heavy. Across the room, her fiancé Harrison Blackwood held court with the territory's wealthiest men, his cruel laugh cutting through the violin music like a knife. "Miss Hartwell, may I have this dance?" Harrison's business associate, a portly banker with wandering hands, extended his palm. Before she could manufacture another excuse, Catherine's desperate eyes landed on a figure near the garden doors. A man who didn't belong here at all. Before I continue with Catherine's daring escape, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening to this tale from today? His clothes were travel-worn leather and dusty denim, his jaw shadowed with several days' stubble. Dark hair fell past his collar, and a jagged scar cut through his left eyebrow. He stood apart from the silk-clad guests like a wolf among peacocks, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room with unsettling intensity. Catherine made her decision in a heartbeat. She swept across the ballroom, ignoring the banker's confused protests, her emerald silk gown rustling with each determined step. The stranger's eyes locked onto her as she approached, one dark eyebrow rising in question. Without preamble, without explanation, Catherine reached up, grabbed the lapels of his worn leather coat, and pulled him down into a kiss. For a moment, he went rigid with surprise. Then his large, calloused hands came to rest on her waist, steady, warm, careful. The kiss was brief, barely more than a press of lips, but it sent lightning down her spine. When she pulled back, his gray eyes had darkened to storm clouds. "What?" he began, his voice a low rumble. "I'm terribly sorry," Catherine whispered urgently, her heart hammering against her ribs. "But I needed everyone to see that, particularly my fiancé." The stranger's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked past her shoulder, and Catherine knew without looking that Harrison had noticed. She could feel his fury like heat at her back. "Your fiancé," the stranger repeated slowly, his hands still resting on her waist. "The man currently turning purple over there. That would be him, yes." Catherine forced herself to breathe. "Harrison Blackwood. He owns half the county, and he'll own me too, unless you make him believe you've been unfaithful." The stranger's expression hardened. "That's a dangerous game, miss." "Catherine, my name is Catherine Hartwell." She met his eyes steadily. "And I'm already in danger. At least this way, it's danger of my own choosing." Before he could respond, Harrison's voice cut through the music. "Catherine, step away from that vagrant, immediately." The stranger's hands dropped from her waist, but he didn't step back. Instead, he angled his body slightly, placing himself between Catherine and her approaching fiancé. The movement was subtle, instinctive, protective. Harrison stormed across the ballroom floor, guests parting before him like water. His handsome face was twisted with rage, his perfectly groomed blonde hair gleaming in the chandelier light. "How dare you embarrass me in front of the governor? And with this drifter." "Mr. Blackwood." The stranger's voice was quiet, controlled, but it carried an edge that made Harrison falter mid-stride. "I'd suggest you lower your voice when speaking to the lady." "Lady?" Harrison laughed harshly. "She's my betrothed, which makes her my concern, not yours." And you, whoever you are trespassing. This ball is for respectable citizens, not whatever gutter you crawled out of." The stranger reached into his coat with deliberate slowness. Catherine's breath caught, wondering if he'd draw a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a worn leather wallet and flipped it open to reveal a silver star. "Cole Maddox," he said calmly. "I'm the new sheriff of Copper Creek. Arrived 3 hours ago. The governor invited me to this ball, though I'll admit I wasn't planning to attend until my luggage arrives tomorrow." His gray eyes were cold as winter rain. "So I'm not trespassing, Mr. Blackwood. But you are threatening a lady in my presence, which is something I don't tolerate." The color drained from Harrison's face, then flooded back in a mottled red. "This doesn't concern you, Sheriff. Catherine is contracted to marry me. Her father signed the agreement before he died, leaving her in my care. I'm not a sack of grain to be traded," Catherine heard herself say, surprising them both. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. "My father was desperate when he signed that agreement, Mr. Blackwood. You'd threatened to call in his debts, to take our ranch. He thought he was protecting me." "He was," Harrison snapped. "Who else would take a penniless girl with nothing but a failing cattle ranch? You should be grateful." "Grateful?" Catherine's hands clenched into fists. "You've squeezed every neighboring rancher until they had nothing left. You've used the law, the banks, every tool at your disposal to build your empire. And now you want to add me to your collection of acquisitions?" Harrison's hand shot out, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. "You'll watch your tongue." Cole moved faster than seemed possible for a man his size. One moment, Harrison held Catherine's arm. The next, he was bent backward over Cole's forearm. The sheriff's hand locked around his wrist in a grip that made Harrison gasp with pain. "The lady asked you not to touch her," Cole said softly, dangerously. "In my territory, that means you don't touch her. Are we clear, Mr. Blackwood?" For a long moment, the ballroom held its breath. Then Harrison wrenched his arm free, stumbling backward. "This isn't over," he hissed, his eyes promising violence. "That contract is legal, Sheriff. Catherine will be my wife, whether she likes it or not. And as for you, we'll see how long you last in Copper Creek when you realize who truly runs this county." He turned and strode from the ballroom, leaving a wake of whispers behind him. Catherine found herself swaying, the reality of what she'd done crashing over her. She'd just publicly humiliated the most powerful man in the territory. She'd kissed a complete stranger, who turned out to be the new sheriff, and she'd spoken truths that couldn't be unspoken. Easy now. Cole's hands steadied her elbow, his touch gentle despite the strength she'd just witnessed. "Let's get you some air." He guided her through the garden doors onto a wide veranda overlooking the governor's grounds. The cool night air tasted like sage and freedom. Catherine gripped the railing, her legs trembling beneath her elaborate gown. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I've complicated your first day as sheriff considerably. Miss Hartwell, Catherine, look at me." Cole waited until she turned to face him. In the moonlight, his scarred face seemed less harsh, more weary. "Did you mean what you said in there? About not wanting to marry Blackwood?" "Every word." Catherine's voice was steady now. "My father thought he was saving me, but he was handing me over to a monster. Harrison is cruel to his workers, ruthless in business, and," she swallowed hard, "and he's made it clear what kind of husband he'll be. The kind who believes wives are property to be used and discarded." Cole's jaw muscles flexed. "The contract your father signed, do you have a copy?" "At the ranch. My ranch, though Harrison's threatening to take it for unpaid debts." Catherine laughed bitterly. "Debts my father incurred. trying to avoid marrying me off to Harrison in the first place. It's quite the trap he's built. Contracts can be challenged. Cole leaned against the railing beside her, his large frame surprisingly graceful, especially if they were signed under duress. But that takes time, and lawyers, and money you probably don't have. No. Catherine looked out at the Dart Hills beyond the governor's property. I don't have any of those things. Just a failing ranch, 2 aging horses, and apparently a talent for making terrible decisions at formal balls. To her surprise, Cole chuckled, a low, rough sound that seemed rusty from disuse. For what it's worth, I've been kissed for worse reasons, and at least you chose to kiss a lawman instead of an outlaw. That shows some judgment. Despite everything, Catherine found herself smiling. You weren't wearing your badge. How was I to know you weren't an outlaw? Fair point. Cole turned to face her fully. Catherine, I need you to understand something. What happened in there, what Blackwood said about running this county, that's going to make my job harder. Men like him don't accept challenges to their authority. And now I've made an enemy of him on my first day. I'm sorry, Catherine said again. Truly, I'll explain to everyone that the kiss meant nothing, that I was just… No. Cole's hand covered hers on the railing, his palm warm and calloused. Don't apologize for choosing yourself, even for a moment, and don't lie to protect him. His gray eyes held hers. But I need you to be honest with me now. Are you in immediate danger from Blackwood? Tonight? Tomorrow? Catherine considered. Not immediate physical danger. Harrison is too concerned with his reputation to act rashly. He'll use legal means first. The contract, the debts, the courts. But eventually, she didn't finish the sentence. Eventually, he'll find a way to force your hand. Cole nodded slowly. How long until the wedding? 3 weeks. He's been planning an elaborate ceremony to show off his new acquisition. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. 3 weeks. Cole was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he straightened, seeming to come to a decision. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Catherine's heart began to race again. All right. Your ranch, is it livable? Could someone stay there, help work it? She blinked in confusion. It's rough, but yes. The house is sound, just needs repairs. But I don't understand. I need a place to stay while I establish myself in Copper Creek, Cole said. The sheriff's office has a room, but it's not suitable for long-term living, and the boarding house in town is owned by Blackwood, which creates a conflict of interest. He met her eyes steadily. I could stay at your ranch, help with repairs and work in exchange for room and board. It would give you protection from Blackwood, and it would give me independence from his influence. Catherine stared at him. You'd do that? Move on to my property with me unmarried? Sheriff, that would ruin what's left of my reputation. Your reputation is already ruined after tonight, Cole said bluntly. Blackwood will make sure of that. But having the sheriff living on your property, visibly working the land, that's different from having a drifter there. It's protective custody, in a way. Legal and public. Protective custody, Catherine repeated slowly. It made a strange kind of sense. And when the 3 weeks are up, when Harrison forces the issue of the contract? Cole's expression grew hard. By then, I'll have had time to review that contract, talk to lawyers, and establish my authority in this county. Maybe we can find a way to break it legally. And if Blackwood tries to take you by force, his hand moved to rest on the revolver at his hip, the gesture unconscious. Well, that's what sheriffs are for. Catherine looked at this stranger she'd kissed less than an hour ago. This scarred, rough-edged man who'd stepped between her and danger without hesitation. who offered protection instead of possession. "Why would you do this?" she asked quietly. "You don't know me. This will make your job harder, create enemies, complicate everything. Why would you help me?" Cole was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. 5 years ago, I failed to protect someone who needed help, he finally said, his voice rough. I was a different kind of lawman then, more concerned with following rules than doing what was right. She died because I didn't act when I should have. He met Catherine's eyes. I swore I'd never make that mistake again. You're not property, Catherine. You're a person worth saving, and I see a woman who's willing to fight for herself. That's worth helping. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. For months, she'd been drowning in her father's death, in Harrison's tightening trap, in the whispers of the town that said she should be grateful for any offer of marriage. And now this stranger, this sheriff, was offering her a lifeline without demanding anything in return except the chance to do what was right. Together, she heard herself say, "If we're going to do this, we face Blackwood together. I won't be a damsel locked in a tower while you fight my battles." Cole's scarred eyebrow rose. "Can you ride?" "I was born on a ranch, Sheriff." "Can you shoot?" "My father taught me before he died." "Can you stand up to Blackwood's intimidation when he comes calling?" "Because he will come calling." Catherine straightened her spine, lifting her chin. "I just kissed a ragged stranger at the ball to escape my engagement, not knowing he was the new sheriff. I think I can handle whatever comes next." Cole's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "That you did, Miss Hartwell. That you did." He offered his arm. "Then I suppose we should return to the ball and let the governor know about our new arrangement. And then tomorrow you can show me this ranch of yours." Catherine took his arm, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the worn leather. "Together," she said again, testing the word. "Together," Cole agreed. As they walked back into the ballroom, Catherine felt the weight of scandalized stares, heard the whispers starting to build. She saw Harrison across the room, his face dark with fury. She knew she'd just made her life infinitely more complicated. But for the first time in months, she also felt hope. The morning sun painted Copper Creek in shades of gold and amber, as Cole rode his roan mare up the winding path to the Hartwell Ranch. Catherine had given him directions at the ball before the governor politely but firmly suggested they both leave before Harrison created a bigger scene. Now, in the clear light of day, Cole wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. He'd been in Copper Creek for less than 24 hours and already made an enemy of the most powerful man in the county, agreed to live with an unmarried woman, and complicated his ability to enforce the law impartially. His predecessor as sheriff would have called him a fool. His predecessor had also been on Blackwood's payroll, which was why the governor had brought Cole in from Denver to clean up the territory. The ranch house appeared around a bend in the trail, a solid 2-story structure with a wraparound porch, built from local timber that had weathered to silver gray. The barn needed new boards, and the corral fence leaned dangerously in places. But the land itself was beautiful. Rolling hills covered in prairie grass, a creek running clear through the eastern pasture, cottonwood trees providing shade near the house. And standing on the porch in practical split skirts and a simple white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a braid, was Catherine. She looked different in daylight, away from the silk and crystals of the governor's ball. Younger, maybe, but stronger too. More herself. "Sheriff Maddox," she called out, shading her eyes against the sun. "You found it. Your directions were good." Cole dismounted, noting the two aging horses in the corral that she'd mentioned. "And call me Cole. If I'm going to be staying here, we can skip the formalities. Then you should call me Catherine." She descended the porch steps with easy grace. "Or Cat, which is what my father called me. I thought perhaps you'd reconsidered in the light of day." "Did you want me to reconsider?" Cole tied his mare to the hitching post. Catherine met his eyes directly. "No. I spent last night lying awake, expecting every sound to be Harrison coming to force the issue. Having you here, having anyone here who isn't afraid of him, that matters." "I'm not afraid of him," Cole said quietly. "But I'm not stupid either, Cat. Men like Blackwood don't surrender power easily. This arrangement will provoke him. Everything provokes him." Catherine's voice carried old bitterness. "My father's success provoked him. My mother's beauty provoked him before she died. My refusal to simper and flatter provoked him. At least this way, I'm not alone when he makes his move." Cole studied her face, seeing the shadows under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. "Show me the ranch," he said. "Let's see what we're working with." Catherine led him through the property, pointing out what worked and what didn't. The well was good, the water pure and plentiful. The barn needed repairs, but the structure was sound. The house itself was solid, built by her grandfather with careful hands. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Catherine explained as they toured the interior. The house was clean, but sparse. Furniture worn, but well-maintained. "You can take the one on the east side. It gets morning sun and has a good view of the main road, so you can see anyone coming." The bedroom she showed him was simple. A sturdy bed frame, a pine dresser, a chair by the window. Better than many places Cole had slept in his years as a lawman. "The kitchen works well," Catherine continued, leading him back downstairs. "We have chickens for eggs, a vegetable garden that's producing, and I can hunt small game when needed. We won't starve, but we won't prosper either. Not with Harrison buying up all the cattle contracts and pressuring the markets against us." "How many head of cattle do you have?" 47. It was 200 before my father died, but disease took some, and we had to sell others to pay debts. Harrison made sure we got bottom dollar for every sale." Cole's hands clenched. "He's been strangling you slowly." "That's his way. Slow." They stood in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that looked out over the creek. Cole saw how Catherine's home had been slowly dismantled by a man who wanted to own her, and something cold and hard settled in his chest. "We're going to need to inventory everything," he said. "Every asset, every debt, every contract your father signed. I'll review the marriage agreement tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to pay a visit to the county clerk and the bank. See what leverage Blackwood actually has. He'll know you're investigating him." "Good, let him know." Cole met her eyes. "I'm the sheriff, Cat. It's my job to understand what's legal and what's not in this county. If that makes Blackwood nervous, then maybe he's not as untouchable as he thinks." A small smile touched Catherine's lips, the first genuine smile Cole had seen from her. "My father always said the best defense is a good offense." Your father was right. Cole glanced around the kitchen, noting the worn but clean workspace. "Now, about practical matters. I can pay you for room and board." "No," Catherine shook her head firmly. "You're helping me, Cole. I won't take your money on top of that, but I expect you to work for your keep. There's fence to mend, barn boards to replace, and 47 cattle that need tending. Can you handle ranch work?" Cole almost laughed. I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming before I became a lawman. I can handle it. Then we have a deal. Catherine extended her hand, businesslike. Cole took it, her palm small but strong in his grip. For a moment, they stood there in the sunny kitchen, hands clasped, and Cole felt something shift. An understanding, maybe. A partnership forming. The moment broke when hoofbeats sounded from the road. Both of them moved to the window. 4 riders approached the ranch at a steady pace, and Cole recognized the lead horse immediately. A bay gelding that had been tied outside the governor's mansion last night. Harrison Blackwood had come calling. "Go upstairs," Cole said quietly. "No," Catherine's chin lifted. "Together, remember? I won't hide in my own house." Cole wanted to argue, wanted to shield her from what was coming. But he saw the determination in her eyes and recognized it for what it was. Courage that had been beaten down, but not broken. "All right," he said, "but stay behind me. And Kat, if shooting starts, you get to cover. Understood?" "Understood." They walked out onto the porch together as Harrison and his 3 men reined in their horses. In daylight, Blackwood looked even more polished than he had at the ball. Expensive suit, perfectly groomed hair, manicured hands that had never known real work. The 3 men with him were different. Cowboys, but not the honest kind. Gun hands, Cole assessed automatically. The kind of men who hired out their violence to whoever paid best. "Sheriff Maddox," Harrison said smoothly, his fury from last night replaced with cold calculation. "And my dear Catherine, how cozy." "Mr. Blackwood," Cole kept his voice neutral, professional. "What can I do for you?" "You can step away from my fiancé for starters." Harrison dismounted with practiced ease. "Catherine, I came to discuss last night's unfortunate display. I'm willing to overlook your behavior, given your grief over your father, but this charade with the sheriff needs to end." "It's not a charade," Catherine said, her voice steady. "Sheriff Maddox is renting a room here while he establishes himself in Copper Creek. It's a business arrangement." "A business arrangement?" Harrison's laugh was ugly. "Is that what you're calling it? Catherine, you've humiliated me in front of the entire territory. You kissed this vagrant, this sheriff, in public. You spoke against me, challenged me, and now you're living with him?" "I'm renting him a room," Catherine corrected. "There's nothing improper about it." "Everything about it is improper." Harrison's carefully controlled facade cracked, showing the rage beneath. "You're mine, Catherine. Your father promised you to me, signed a legal contract. You have no choice in this matter." "People aren't property, Blackwood," Cole said quietly. "The lady has made her wishes clear." "The lady," Harrison sneered, "is in violation of a binding contract. I could take her to court, force the marriage, and there's nothing you can do about it, Sheriff." Cole felt Catherine tense beside him, but he kept his own posture relaxed, unthreatening. "Actually, there's quite a bit I can do. I can review that contract to ensure it's legal and not signed under duress. I can investigate the circumstances of its signing. And I can make sure that Catherine has legal representation when this goes to court." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Maddox. I own this county, the bank, half the businesses, most of the cattle contracts. I can make your job impossible." "You can try." Cole's voice remained calm. "But I don't work for you, Blackwood. I work for the governor and the people of this territory. And right now, one of those people has asked for protection from a man who thinks a piece of paper gives him ownership of a human being. That piece of paper is legally binding. Then we'll let a judge decide that, in a proper court, with proper representation for both parties. Cole took a single step forward, his hand resting casually near his revolver. But until then, Miss Hartwell is under the protection of my office. And anyone who tries to force her into anything against her will is going to answer to me. The three gun hands shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward their weapons. Cole marked each movement, calculating angles and odds. "Don't," he said softly, his eyes never leaving Harrison's face. "You draw on a sheriff? That's a hanging offense. Even Blackwood's money can't save you from that." For a long moment, the tension stretched thin as wire. Then Harrison raised a hand, stopping his men. "This isn't over," he said, his voice deadly calm now. "That contract is legal, Maddox, and I have a dozen lawyers who will prove it. Catherine will be my wife within the month, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." He turned to Catherine, his expression shifting to something almost gentle, which was somehow more frightening than his rage. "Cat," he said softly, using her father's nickname like a weapon. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm offering you security, stability, a position in society. All you have to do is accept what's already been decided." "I'd rather die," Catherine said, quietly. Harrison's mask slipped again, fury flashing across his face. "That can be arranged too." He swung back into his saddle. "You have 1 week, Catherine. 1 week to come to your senses, apologize, and return to town like the proper lady you're supposed to be. After that, I'll use every legal means at my disposal to force your hand. And Sheriff," he looked down at Cole with contempt, "you might want to reconsider who you're protecting. Catherine's father left more debts than you know. When I call those debts due, this ranch will be mine anyway, and then she'll have nothing and no one." Harrison wheeled his horse around, his gun hands following. They galloped down the road in a cloud of dust, leaving silence behind. Catherine was shaking, Cole realized, not with fear, but with fury so intense she could barely contain it. "He threatened my life," she whispered. "He stood on my property and threatened to kill me, and his men just sat there like it was normal, like I'm an object to be disposed of if I'm not convenient." "I know." Cole's own anger was cold and controlled, the kind that led to careful planning instead of rash action. "And he made those threats in front of a lawman. That's useful." Catherine looked at him, confusion breaking through her rage. "Useful?" "Evidence, witness testimony. Blackwood just showed his hand, revealed how far he's willing to go." Cole turned to face her fully. "Cat, I need you to be honest with me now. How bad are the debts? Could he really take the ranch?" She slumped against the porch railing, the fury draining out of her. "Bad enough. My father borrowed from Blackwood's bank to keep the ranch running after my mother died. When the cattle market crashed, we couldn't make payments. Harrison offered to forgive the debts if I married him. My father was dying, desperate, and Harrison made it seem like the only solution. How much is owed?" $5,000. Plus interest." Catherine's laugh was bitter. "I have 47 cattle, 2 aging horses, and maybe $300 in savings. Even if I sold everything, I couldn't pay half of it. $5,000. In 1875, that was enough to buy 2 ranches this size." Cole's mind raced through possibilities, legal angles, ways to fight. "The contract your father signed, where is it?" "In the house. I'll get it." While Catherine retrieved the document, Cole paced the porch, thinking. Blackwood had made mistakes. The threats, for one. The obvious coercion behind the marriage contract, for another. But proving coercion in court would be difficult, especially with Blackwood's lawyers and influence. Catherine returned with a sheaf of papers. Cole took them to the porch rail, where the light was good, and began reading. The marriage contract was straightforward. Catherine Hartwell would marry Harrison Blackwood within 6 months of her father's death, and in return, all debts owed to Blackwood's interests would be forgiven. Her father's signature was there, shaky but legitimate. But the debt documents beneath it made Cole's jaw tighten. The interest rates were usurious, well above legal limits. The terms were buried in legal language designed to confuse. And there were penalty clauses that had effectively doubled the debt when payments were missed. "This isn't legal," Cole said slowly. "These interest rates violate territorial lending laws. And these penalty clauses? Cat, this is predatory lending. I've seen loan sharks in Denver with better terms." Catherine's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "I'm not a lawyer, but I've enforced enough financial crime laws to know usury when I see it." Cole's mind was already planning. "We need to get this to the territorial attorney's office, file a complaint, request an investigation into Blackwood's banking practices." "That will take months," Catherine protested. "We have a week before Harrison moves against us." "Then we buy more time." Cole looked at her steadily. "I'm going to file an official protection order, citing Blackwood's threats this morning. That gives us legal grounds to keep him away from you. And I'm sending these documents to the territorial capital tonight by express rider. Even if Blackwood owns the local courts, he doesn't own the territorial government." Hope flickered in Catherine's eyes, fragile but growing. "You think we can actually fight him?" "I think we can make him wish he'd never threatened you." Cole folded the documents carefully. "But Cat, you need to understand. This is going to get ugly. Blackwood will retaliate, probably try to destroy me professionally and you personally. Are you ready for that?" Catherine straightened, and Cole saw the steel in her spine, the strength that had let her survive this long. "I kissed a stranger at a ball to escape him, Cole. I burned my bridges in front of the entire territory's elite. I'm already committed to this fight. Then we fight together." Cole offered his hand again, and this time when Catherine took it, the grip felt like a promise. "But first, we work. Because whether Blackwood likes it or not, this ranch is going to survive. And so are you." They spent the rest of the day working the property, Cole repairing fence lines while Catherine tended the cattle. It was hard, honest work under the Montana sun, and by evening, both of them were exhausted and covered in dust. Catherine made dinner from their simple stores: beans, salt pork, and sourdough bread. They ate on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Thank you," Catherine said quietly, "for everything today, for standing up to Harrison, for seeing what he's doing with those debt documents, for just being here." Cole looked at her profile in the fading light, seeing the exhaustion and determination mixed together. "You don't need to thank me, Cat. This is my job." "Is it?" She turned to face him. "I don't think investigating loan documents and facing down wealthy ranchers is usually in a sheriff's daily duties." "Maybe not," Cole admitted. "But protecting people who can't protect themselves, that's always been part of the job. At least the job I want to do." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "What happened?" she asked. "You mentioned failing to protect someone. You don't have to tell me, but I'd like to understand." Cole hadn't talked about Denver in years, but sitting here in the twilight with this woman who'd trusted him with her life, he found the words coming. Her name was Sarah. She worked in a dance hall in Denver, trying to save money to get out. A local businessman took a liking to her, started making demands. She came to me, asked for help, said she was afraid. Cole's hands clenched on his knees. I told her I couldn't do anything unless he actually broke the law. I followed the rules, didn't act on instinct or mercy. 2 days later, she was dead. He'd beaten her to death in an alley, and everyone knew it was him. But there wasn't enough evidence to convict. Oh, Cole. Catherine's hand found his, warm and steady. I quit the Denver police force that day, Cole continued, his voice rough. Spent 3 years drifting, trying to figure out what kind of lawman I wanted to be. The governor offered me this position because he wanted someone who'd clean up corruption, not participate in it. He looked at Catherine. I swore I'd never ignore someone asking for help again. Never follow rules that let powerful men destroy the vulnerable. That's what you see when you look at me, Catherine said softly. Sarah. No. Cole turned his hand to grip hers properly. I see you, Cat. A woman who's been backed into a corner and is fighting back with everything she has. Sarah gave up. You're still swinging. Catherine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Some days I want to give up. When I wake up and remember my father's gone, that Harrison owns almost everything, that I'm fighting a battle I'll probably lose, some days it feels easier to just surrender. But you don't. Cole's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gentle gesture that felt right. You keep fighting. That's not weakness, Cat. That's the strongest thing a person can do. They sat in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, and something shifted between them. Not attraction exactly, though Cole couldn't deny that Catherine was beautiful. But something deeper. Recognition. 2 people who'd been broken by different failures, finding strength in each other's company. We should get some sleep, Cole finally said, though he was reluctant to break the moment. Tomorrow I ride to town, file the protection order, and send those documents to the Capitol. Things are going to start moving fast. Cole? Catherine's voice stopped him as he stood. Sleep with your gun close tonight. Harrison's never been defied like this before. I don't know what he'll do, but I know it won't be good. Already planning on it. Cole checked the revolver at his hip automatically. And Cat, lock your door. Not because I'm a threat, but because if someone gets past me, I want them to have to break through another barrier to get to you. Together, Catherine whispered. Together, Cole agreed. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and dangerous. Cole spent his days divided between sheriff duties in town and working the ranch. Catherine worked alongside him, proving herself as capable with cattle and repairs as any ranch hand Cole had known. They talked while they worked, about Cole's years as a lawman, about Catherine's childhood on the ranch, about books and ideas and dreams that seemed distant from their current reality. Cole taught her to track game, showing her signs in the dirt that told stories. Catherine taught him her mother's cooking, transforming their simple supplies into meals that tasted like home. The town watched them with suspicious eyes. Rumors flew, the scandalous arrangement, the improper cohabitation, the sheriff who'd betrayed his duty by choosing a woman over neutrality. But Cole had faced worse judgment, and Catherine had already burned her reputation at the governor's ball. Harrison made his moves carefully, legally. The protection order Cole filed was challenged in court. The debt documents Cole sent to the Capitol began working through bureaucratic channels. Harrison bought up more neighboring properties, tightening his stranglehold on the county's economy. But he didn't come to the ranch again, and his threats remained verbal, legal. Within the bounds of the law, barely. Cole found himself watching Catherine more than he should. The way she laughed when one of the chickens stole her bread. How she bit her lip when concentrating on a difficult shot with her rifle. the strength in her hands as she worked leather or mended fence. And Catherine found herself aware of Cole in ways that made her breath catch. The careful gentleness of his large hands when doctoring an injured calf. The scar through his eyebrow that gave his face character. The way he always positioned himself between her and potential danger, instinctive and protective. They didn't speak of it, this growing awareness. The situation was complicated enough without adding attraction to the mix. But on the 13th night of their arrangement, everything changed. Cole woke to the smell of smoke. He was moving before his mind fully processed the danger, grabbing his gun and boots, rushing to the window. Orange flames licked at the barn, spreading fast in the dry timber. "Cat!" He pounded on her door. "Fire! Get dressed and get out!" Catherine emerged seconds later, fully clothed. She'd been sleeping in her clothes, Cole realized, ready for this exact kind of attack. They ran together into the night. The barn was fully engulfed now, flames reaching toward the sky. The horses were screaming in terror. "Get buckets from the well," Cole shouted. "I'm getting the horses out." "That's suicide. The whole structure is burning." "Those horses are worth more than my life." Cole was already running toward the barn. "Get water on the house. Don't let it spread." The heat was incredible, even from yards away. Cole wrapped his bandana around his face and charged through the barn door. Inside was hell, flames everywhere, smoke so thick he couldn't see. But he could hear the horses, their terrified screams guiding him. The first horse, his roan mare, he led out by feel, her eyes rolling white with terror. He slapped her rump, sending her running toward the corral. Back inside for the second horse. The smoke was choking him now, burning his lungs. Flames had caught in the hayloft, dropping burning debris. A beam crashed down inches from his head. He found Catherine's aged gelding, grabbed its halter. The horse reared, nearly striking him, mad with fear. Cole held on, using every trick he'd learned working ranches, his voice steady and low, despite the screaming inferno around them. "Easy, boy. I got you. We're going together. Easy now." He led the horse toward where the door should be, but the smoke was too thick to see. His lungs burned, his eyes streaming. For a moment, he thought he'd gotten turned around, that he'd die in this barn trying to save a horse. Then fresh air hit his face. Catherine had found him, speaking beckoningly with her voice. "This way! Cole, this way! Follow my voice!" He stumbled out into the night, the horse bolting free. Cole fell to his knees, coughing so hard he thought his lungs would tear. Catherine was there, pressing water into his hands, supporting his shoulders. "Breathe," she commanded. "Slow breaths. Don't gulp. There's smoke in your lungs." Behind them, the barn collapsed with a roar of flames and timber. The heat drove them back toward the house. Catherine had already soaked the porch and walls with water from the well, creating a fire break. They watched the barn burn, standing close together, both of them coughing and covered in soot. Cole's hands shook with adrenaline and smoke inhalation. "That was incredibly stupid," Catherine finally said, her voice rough. "You could have died. Those horses are animals. You're a person." She rounded on him, and Cole saw tears cutting through the soot on her face. "You're a person, Cole Maddox, and you're worth more than any horse. Don't you ever risk your life like that again." "Says the woman who ran toward a burning barn to guide me out," Cole countered, still coughing. "That's different." "It's not different." Cole's voice was harsh from smoke but intense. "You're worth saving too, Cat. You're worth someone risking everything for." They stared at each other in the firelight, both breathing hard, both covered in ash. Catherine's braid had come loose, dark hair falling around her shoulders. Cole knew he looked like hell, burned, smoke-damaged, probably bleeding from where falling debris had caught him. "This was Harrison," Catherine whispered. "He did this. Can you prove it?" "He threatened. In private, with only his men as witnesses who'll swear he said nothing." Cole's mind was working despite the smoke damage. "He's been careful, Cat. Kept everything just legal enough, just deniable enough. This fire will be called an accident. Maybe blamed on your poor maintenance. So he gets away with it." Catherine's voice broke. "He destroys my barn, nearly kills you, and he just gets away with it." "Not necessarily." Cole looked at the ruins of the barn, his mind calculating. This was desperation, Cat. A desperate move from a man who's losing control. It means what we're doing, the investigation, the protection order, the challenge to his authority. It's working. He's scared. He's scared, so he tried to kill us? He tried to drive you off the land, make you dependent on him again. Burn your resources, force your hand. Cole turned to her. But it didn't work. We saved the horses, saved the house. Yeah, the barn's gone, but we're still here, still fighting. Catherine looked at him, at this man who'd risked death to save her horses, who stood covered in soot and blood, and still talked about fighting. And something inside her cracked open. "You're bleeding," she said, noticing for the first time the gash on his forehead where debris had struck him. "Come inside. Let me clean that." In the kitchen, by lamplight, Catherine tended Cole's wounds with gentle hands. The gash on his forehead needed stitches, which she did with steady fingers and apologies for each prick of the needle. "Where'd you learn to stitch wounds?" Cole asked, trying not to flinch. "My father. Ranch work is dangerous. Someone's always getting hurt." Her fingers brushed his temple, checking her work. "You have a scar through your eyebrow. Is that from a similar, incredibly stupid rescue?" "Knife fight in Denver. I was breaking up a bar brawl." Cole watched her face, so close to his, concentrated on her task. "The other guy had a longer knife, and yet you kept being a lawman." Catherine tied off the last stitch, but her hands remained on his face, framing it. "You keep risking everything for people who might not even thank you for it." "It's who I am." Cole's hands came up to rest on her waist, the gesture feeling inevitable. "Cat, what's happening here, between us? We should probably talk about it." "I know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know it complicates everything. I know you're here to protect me, and I'm already dependent on you, and any feelings between us could be just proximity, or gratitude, or trauma bonding. Could be all those things," Cole agreed. His thumbs traced small circles on her waist through her soot-stained shirt. "Or it could be that I've never met anyone like you. Someone who faces down wealthy bullies, who saves my fool life, who stitches wounds without flinching. You did the saving tonight." Catherine's fingers traced the new stitches on his forehead, feather light. "You always do the saving. We save each other." Cole's voice was rough and not from smoke. "Together, remember?" "Together," Catherine breathed. The kiss was different from the one at the governor's ball. Slower, deeper, real. Catherine's hands slid into his hair, and Cole pulled her closer, both of them tasting of smoke and fear and something fiercer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers carefully, mindful of his stitches. "This is complicated," he said. I don't care. Blackwood will use it against us. Say I've compromised you, that I'm no better than him. You're nothing like him. Catherine's voice was fierce. Harrison wants to own me. You want to save me. Those are completely different things. I don't want to save you, Kat. Cole pulled back to meet her eyes. You don't need saving. You're already strong, already fighting. I just want to stand beside you while you do it. Tears spilled down Catherine's cheeks, cutting new tracks through the soot. No one's ever said anything like that to me. Not even my father. He loved me, but he saw me as something fragile, something to protect and shelter. You're not fragile. Cole wiped away her tears with his thumbs. You're steel wrapped in silk, and anyone who doesn't see that is a fool. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, as dawn began to lighten the sky outside. The ruins of the barn smoked in the growing light, but the house stood strong, and they stood together. What happens now? Catherine asked. Now? Now we report the fire to my deputy, document everything, and add it to the case against Blackwood. Cole's voice turned hard. And then we rebuild. We show that bastard that we won't be driven off, won't be intimidated, won't surrender. The barn will take weeks to rebuild, money we don't have. Then we start with a simple shelter and build from there. Cole kissed her forehead gently. Together, Kat. Every nail, every board. We build it together. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Cole's investigation into Blackwood's banking practices uncovered more than just usurious lending. There was evidence of fraud, intimidation, and possibly even involvement in the previous sheriff's suspicious death. But gathering evidence that would stand up in court was slow, dangerous work. Harrison escalated his campaign. He called in Catherine's debts, demanding full payment. He bought the notes of neighboring ranchers, foreclosing on properties, and tightening his control over the county. He made public statements about the scandal of the sheriff living with an unmarried woman, questioning Cole's fitness for office. Cole's deputy resigned under pressure, leaving Cole to police the county alone. The town's businesses, dependent on Blackwood's money, began refusing to serve them. Someone took shots at their cattle, killing 3, but Catherine and Cole built, not just the barn, a simple pole structure that gave the horses shelter, but a case, piece by piece. Witness statements from ranchers Blackwood had destroyed, documents showing the pattern of predatory lending, evidence of intimidation and violence. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, their hands growing harder, their partnership growing stronger. And at night, they sat on the porch, talking about futures that seemed impossible, but felt increasingly real. If we survive this, Catherine said one evening, if we actually beat Harrison and I keep the ranch, what then? Cole was quiet for a moment. I don't know. I'm the sheriff here. That's a commitment. But you and I, Kat, this isn't just convenience anymore. At least not for me. Not for me either. Catherine's hand found his in the darkness. I keep thinking about what it would be like if you stayed, really stayed, not just as protection, but as your husband? Cole said the word they'd both been dancing around for weeks. Yes, Catherine's voice was barely audible. Is that insane? We've known each other less than a month. Everything about this situation is wrong. The power imbalance, the circumstances, the timing. Everything except how I feel when I'm with you, Cole countered. How right it feels to work beside you, talk with you, fight for this ranch and this future. He turned to face her. Kat, I can't promise you this will work. I can't even promise we'll survive the next week with Harrison. but I can promise that what I feel for you is real. Not gratitude, not proximity. Real." Catherine's eyes shone with tears in the moonlight. "My father warned me about men who make pretty promises. He said trust is earned through actions, not words. Your father was right." Cole's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "So judge me by my actions, Kat. I've stood between you and danger. I've fought for your property rights. I've risked my career and reputation to protect you. And I'm still here, still fighting, still building a future that might not even exist." "You're still here," Catherine agreed softly, then stronger. "And so am I, together." They kissed on the porch as the stars wheeled overhead, and this time when they broke apart, Cole asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Marry me," he said simply, "not because of contracts or debts or obligation. Marry me because we choose each other, because we've built something worth keeping." Catherine looked at him, this scarred, stubborn lawman who'd walked into her life at the worst possible moment and somehow made everything better. "On one condition," she said. Cole's heart sank. "What condition?" "We wait until after the trial. Until after we've beaten Harrison and proven these feelings aren't just adrenaline and danger." Catherine's hands framed his face. "I won't marry you while I'm still technically engaged to another man. I won't start our life together while that shadow hangs over us. Beat Harrison first, then ask me again." Cole understood. It wasn't rejection, it was Catherine being strong enough to wait for the right moment, clear-headed enough to build their foundation properly. "Then we wait," he agreed. "But Kat, I'm already sure, this isn't adrenaline. This is you." The trial came 3 weeks later, held in the territorial capital where Blackwood's influence was weaker. The governor himself attended, making clear that justice, not local politics, would prevail. Catherine sat beside Cole in the courtroom, wearing her best dress, her hand clasped tightly in his. Across the aisle, Harrison Blackwood radiated confident fury, surrounded by his expensive lawyers. The case Cole had built was presented piece by piece. The usurious lending practices, the intimidation tactics, the coercion behind the marriage contract. Witness after witness testified to Blackwood's predatory business methods. Harrison's lawyers countered with technicalities, with character assassination, with arguments that everything had been legal according to the letter, if not the spirit, of the law. But then Cole presented his final piece of evidence. The previous sheriff's journal, discovered hidden in the office. Page after page documented Blackwood's illegal activities, his threats, his violence. The journal ended abruptly 2 days before the sheriff's accidental death. The courtroom erupted. Harrison's lawyers scrambled, and the judge, a stern woman who'd seen corruption destroy too many territories, called for order. The verdict took 2 days of deliberation. Catherine spent those days at the hotel, unable to eat or sleep, imagining futures that ranged from freedom to absolute ruin. Cole stayed close, solid and steady, his presence an anchor. When the verdict came, Catherine could barely breathe. "In the matter of the debt contracts," the judge read, "this court finds evidence of usurious lending practices in violation of territorial law. The debts are hereby reduced to their legal maximum, with credit given for payments already made." She looked directly at Harrison. "Mr. Blackwood, you are ordered to pay restitution to Miss Hartwell in the amount of $2,000. Harrison's face turned purple, but the judge wasn't finished. "In the matter of the marriage contract, this court finds clear evidence of coercion and duress. The contract is hereby declared null and void. Miss Hartwell is under no obligation to marry Mr. Blackwood." Catherine's sob of relief was audible throughout the courtroom. Cole's arm came around her shoulders, steady and strong. "Furthermore," the judge continued, her voice hard as stone, "this court finds sufficient evidence to warrant a full criminal investigation into Mr. Blackwood's business practices, including possible involvement in the death of Sheriff James Morrison. Mr. Blackwood, you are remanded to custody pending that investigation." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Harrison's lawyers shouted objections. U.S. Marshals moved to take Harrison into custody. Harrison himself lunged toward Catherine, his face twisted with rage. "You'll pay for this!" he screamed as marshals grabbed him. "I'll destroy you! I'll destroy everything you—" His words were cut off as he was dragged from the courtroom. Catherine collapsed into Cole's arms, shaking with sobs that were equal parts relief and delayed terror. He held her tightly, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "Cat, it's over. You're free." "We're free," she corrected, pulling back to look at him. "Together." Cole kissed her in front of the judge, the governor, and the entire courtroom, and not a single person objected. The journey back to Copper Creek took 3 days. Catherine and Cole rode side by side, watching the Montana landscape roll past, both of them lighter than they'd felt in months. "What will you do with the restitution money?" Cole asked. "Rebuild the barn properly, buy new cattle, hire a ranch hand so I'm not doing everything alone." Catherine smiled. "Maybe even buy a new dress for a certain occasion." Cole's eyebrow rose. "What occasion?" "Well, a very stubborn sheriff once asked me to marry him. I told him to ask again after the trial." Catherine reined her horse to a stop, looking at Cole in the afternoon sun. "We just had the trial, Sheriff Maddox. I'm waiting for my question." Cole dismounted and helped Catherine down, his hands lingering on her waist. They stood on the trail, Montana spreading out around them in gold and green, the future suddenly bright and possible. "Catherine Hartwell," Cole said, his voice steady and sure. "Will you marry me? Not because of contracts or convenience or protection. Marry me because I love you. Because you're the strongest, bravest, most stubborn woman I've ever met. Because when I imagine my future, you're in every part of it." Catherine's smile was radiant. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Cole Maddox. I'll marry you because you see me as a person, not property. Because you stood beside me when everyone else walked away. Because you taught me what partnership really means." She pressed her hand over his heart. "Because I love you, you stubborn, reckless, wonderful man." They kissed on the trail, and this time there was no urgency, no desperation, just joy and promise and the beginning of something beautiful. The wedding took place 2 weeks later on the Hartwell Ranch, Catherine's ranch, fully hers now. The governor attended, along with the townspeople of Copper Creek who'd watched their fight and respected their courage. Catherine wore a simple white dress, wildflowers in her hair. Cole wore his best suit, his sheriff's star polished to a shine. The circuit preacher performed the ceremony on the porch where they'd spent so many evenings talking about futures that seemed impossible. "Do you, Catherine Hartwell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." Catherine's voice rang clear and certain. "And do you, Cole Maddox, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Cole said, his scarred face transformed by his smile. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Cole did, thoroughly, to the cheers of their guests. When they finally broke apart, both grinning, Catherine whispered in his ear. "Together." "Together," Cole agreed. "Always." The celebration lasted into the night, food and music and dancing under the Montana stars. At one point, Cole found Catherine alone on the porch, looking out over the ranch that had nearly been stolen from her. "Regrets?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Not a single one." Catherine leaned back against his chest. "Though I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't kissed you at that ball." "You'd have found another way to fight," Cole said with certainty. "You're not someone who surrenders, Cat." "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to fight alone." She turned in his arms. "Thank you for seeing me, for standing beside me, for choosing me. Thank you for choosing me back." Cole kissed her forehead. "Now come on, Mrs. Maddox. Our guests are waiting, and I believe someone mentioned cake." Catherine laughed and let him lead her back to the celebration. Later, much later, after the guests had gone and the ranch was quiet under the stars, they stood together on the porch one more time. "What do you think happens next?" Catherine asked. "We build," Cole said simply. "We work this ranch, I keep the peace in Copper Creek, and we build a life worth living. Together." "Together," Catherine echoed, and kissed her husband under the Montana sky. And together they did exactly that. Epilogue. 1 year later. Catherine Maddox stood in the doorway of the new barn, properly built this time, with strong timber and careful craftsmanship, and watched her husband work with one of the new ranch hands they'd hired. The ranch was thriving now, the cattle healthy and numerous, the land productive. Cole had been elected sheriff officially, no longer just appointed. The town had seen how he'd stood against corruption, and they'd chosen him overwhelmingly. Harrison Blackwood was in prison, his business empire dismantled, and his victims finally compensated. But more than any of that, Catherine was happy. Truly, deeply happy. Cole looked up and caught her watching, his scarred face breaking into a smile that still made her heart flutter. He sent something to the ranch hand and walked over to her, pulling her into his arms. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how I kissed a ragged stranger at a ball to escape my engagement, not knowing he was the new sheriff." Catherine's eyes sparkled. "Best impulsive decision I ever made." "Second best," Cole corrected, kissing her nose. "The best was saying yes when I proposed." "That wasn't impulsive, that was inevitable." Catherine's hand found his. "We were always going to end up here, Cole. Together." "Together," he agreed, and kissed his wife as the Montana sun set over their ranch, their home, their hard-won future. Together they'd fought for love and freedom. Together, they'd built something beautiful from ashes and determination. And together, they'd continue building for all their years to come. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Catherine and Cole's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.